Hey there, listeners. Welcome back for another episode. We're going to quickly blast through some news so you can get to the episode proper. First of all, Tina Ola's Crowdfunding Chronicles continues. I say this a lot, but it's just ongoing. Tina's a workhorse. Thanks, Tina. Keep on top of what you do. This one, she's talking about Roots of Pacha, which looks just great. Farming sim, Stone Age. I'm hoping there's some dinosaurs, wolves. I don't know. It looks pretty great. And it's definitely in my wheelhouse. And go check it out and see if you want to fund it before it closes off. On this episode, if the art hasn't already given it away, we're talking about Project Triangle Strategy, and Wes Iliff has written a great feature covering Project Triangle Strategy's invisible feature and the trials of gaming while colorblind to essentially address colorblindness in games, since it's something that Wes deals with. And it's an accessibility issue that doesn't always get thought of or covered, but I think more developers these days seem to be making it a priority when they do their development, so that's pretty cool. Going way back in time, Neil Chandran was taking a look at Pokemon Sun and Moon in his feature, where he talks about the ugly side of Paradise, a deeper look at Pokemon Sun and Moon's Team Skull, which just seems to address youth culture in Hawaii as far as I know, which is kind of neat. So go check out his feature if you want to see, some more thought put into the world of Pokemon. And our last big feature comes from Giancarlo Vasquez, which, if you're a Xenoblade fan, is going to be right up your alley. Xenoblade Chronicles' affinity for relativity, and it kind of talks about the communal aspect of the side quests in the game, and that they really just don't exist in a void. Like, a lot of them seem to matter and mean something in this ginormous world that Xenoblade Chronicles has created. So go give that a read. And once again, we've got a pile of reviews, so I'm not going to go into all of them, otherwise, again, it's going to eat up all the time in this intro, but you've got some highlights in there to take a look at. There's a few graphic adventures in there, like Half Past Fate, Romantic Distancing, and the first episode of Scarlet Hollow. There's a neat traditional RPG, rhythm RPG mashup that Alana took a look at and gave the RPG fans editor's choice. My review for Ocean's Heart is finally up, and I love that game, so if you want to find out why, go read that review. And then there's the DLC for the Outer Worlds, Murder on Eridanos, which Jono goes into a little bit on this episode as well. And then there's a few previews, because we got Chernobylite coming up, the Monster Hunter Rise demo came out, the second one, and Good Night Night. Want to see some up-and-coming RPGs, go check that stuff out. And that's it. My brain's all over the place. It's been a long weekend, and been a long week in general, but enjoy this episode of Random Encounter, where we talk about games with underlines in the titles. Listeners, hello, welcome back. It's me, Greg Delmage, here with another episode of Random Encounter. We're up to 210 episodes. I just imagine now Mike Sollosi just kind of scoffing anime style with his far too shiny glasses of pathetic 210, kind of situation.
So you don't have to imagine, because he's right here.
Right? Are you doing that, Mike?
210 is a perfectly admirable number of podcasts to record. Mm-hmm. You should be proud. 210 is a very nice number.
Michael Sollosi is joining us from the realm of Retro Encounter. Mike, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to visit the realm of Random Encounter this time.
Yes, we'll journey to all the realms. We have Jono Logan, my illustrious co-host, back again to keep me on task.
Hello, everyone.
So yeah, we've got some newcomers to Random Encounter on the podcast as well, so let's welcome Nicholas Whaley.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Nicholas. And Brian Mackenzie on the team.
Hey, nice to be on.
Nice to have you. So we are here to talk about RPGs. We have some specific games in mind that have launched recently, but before we get into that, we'll go jabber a little bit about other stuff people are playing that may or may not be the hottest, latest, greatest releases. This podcast was just slightly delayed due to technical difficulties when we first tried to record it, and I even would have liked to have recorded it sooner, but I had a COVID-19 scare at home and got myself locked in isolation. but I thought for some reason that was the opportune time that I should defeat Ganon finally. And I finally beat the original Legend of Zelda on the NES for the first time ever. That game is rad.
That is an outstanding way to spend a COVID quarantine.
It really was. I mean, I had it on the 3DS, so it wasn't like the most authentic experience, but it was still handy. I didn't abuse the whole virtual saves or anything like that. I just played it as per normal. I did have a map open, I'll admit that, just because otherwise, if I was my kid self, I probably would have been drawing the map as I went, but I just did not have the means. So
well, the original version did come with a map, so
there we go.
Yeah, just to make finding dungeons 6, 7, and 8, somewhat reasonable in an era with no or barely internet. But and you also beat it, I guess, probably very close to the 35th anniversary, which was in late February.
Yeah, I was in the Zelda mood, that's for sure.
It's a good way to ring in the anniversary.
It was that rite of passage I just have never done. I've only ever gotten as far as really beating the first dungeon, and I maybe accidentally found some of the far too difficult ones, but that game is really well constructed.
It's such a good game. I mean,
it's
basically I guess it was the prototype for Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, in many ways. The only thing really I find holding it back from modern day, the graphics, I don't know, I don't mind them personally, especially with so much retro makes these days. They're almost in again. But it obviously controls a bit clunky, but otherwise, the dungeon finding, the way you can figure out the secrets to defeat the main bosses almost instantly, all that sort of stuff is just really, really well integrated and just really satisfying when you find it. It's such a cool game. It was so ahead of its time, it feels. It was great.
Yeah, now you get to move on to the best game in the series, Adventures of Link.
Over to you, Jono. What have you been playing lately?
I just finished the last DLC for The Outer Worlds. And
how's that hold up?
I really enjoyed The Outer Worlds, and I really enjoyed its previous piece of DLC.
Yes.
This hit me a little bit less so. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm just a little tired of it, but I think it more likely being... The second DLC was great, I thought, because it really committed to the premise of being a noir experience. There was a lot of pastiche in it. It was very good, creating that atmosphere. Whereas the new DLC it doesn't feel like it commits to its premise. You're invited to a hotel where a celebrity who is a guest has been murdered in the ballroom, and you are hired as an investigator to figure out who killed her. And at first I thought it was going to be like an Agatha Christie style murder mystery sort of thing, and that's what they set up. I mean, there's a lot of the Agatha Christie archetypes, and then it just sort of loses that focus and starts going back into many of the themes that were in the original game, to the point where
like Luigi's Mansion 3 or whatever it is.
No, that would have been funny. It just didn't feel quite as, even inspired is the wrong word. It was a perfectly serviceable piece of DLC. If you enjoyed the original game, there's no reason not to get it. You'll like it. You'll have a good time with it. But the reality is, I feel like The Outer Worlds is done for now. They've done everything that they can with the original game. If they want to continue with The Outer Worlds, I think they need to really go all out on a sequel, create new corporations. Yeah, create new corporations, go to a new system. The world that they created, I think, is pretty resilient and very interesting. And the corporations are a fascinating way to examine how governance works in these systems and religion and society. So I think there's a lot that could be done there, but it's just not... I mean, The Outer Worlds was never a AAA game. It was a AA game that, it really reached, and I think that it excelled in many ways, but I think that it's just done.
It's ready to get its tabletop version and move on.
Yeah, I think they need to do a sequel, and I think that they should just leave this as it is.
There you go.
It's my understanding, like, this is a standalone experience and had many of the same irritations that the first one had. Like, once you beat the DLC, to see the endings of the DLC, you need to beat the game. I understand that they are fixing that come release day, where you can complete the DLCs after you finish the core game. But
yeah, which will have launched by the time this episode is live.
yes, it will. So I am not breaking any confidentiality agreements. And I did not dislike it.
Or the corp will get you.
Yeah. I did not dislike it. I did not love it. It was a perfectly acceptable way to play a few hours of a decent RPG. Actually, no, I'll tell you one thing. The one thing that really did bug me about it was in all of the other the other DLC and the core game, choice plays a major role, and something that the Outer Worlds, I thought, did a very good job of putting the player through the ringer, in the sense that, yeah, there's the good choice and there's the bad choice, but there are always shades of gray within those two. Even if you choose the right answer or the honorable way, some people might get hurt, or there's always a downside. You always need to make tough moral calls. And I like that. And in Gorgon, you are provided with two very legitimate points of view, and you need to choose one or the other. In this game, those moral quandaries aren't really there. You kind of, I'm not going to spoil the plot, but your two choices are, you can either choose the right thing to do, or you can choose the sociopathic thing to do without any redeeming reason to do it. If you choose it, you're just doing it because you want to play as an evil character. But there's no, I don't feel anyway, there is any real reason to do it. Like the rationale, the rationale that's given, unlike in the rest of it, is it's paper thin. It's not really there. And that
just bothered
me a bit.
Just kind of dips back to like the classic stuff, like the basics of like Fallout 3 and Skyrim and stuff, where they're really, it was just basically those two options, not a lot of nuance in between.
Well, that's the thing. There's a reason I like to, you play it, and then you can do another run through of these RPGs to see what the different endings are. And in this particular case, I completed both endings, but I didn't feel a real reason to do the evil one, just because it was like, well, there's no real reason to do it, aside from you just want the world to burn. And I'm not a world to burn kind of player of RPGs. I like, even if the world is burning, even if I'm playing as a selfish character, I at least need there to be some kind of rationale behind it. It's just the kind of it's just the way I play these games. My brother-in-law, when I told him how I played Fallout 4 originally, and I told him, he said, "You're playing the game wrong." And
People just want to troll.
Yeah, I was playing the game wrong from a certain point of view. That's the wonderful thing about RPGs. But for me, if I'm going to be evil, I need there to at least be a reason to be evil, not just because fair. I want to be a huge dick to everybody. So yeah, it was a perfectly fun way to spend a day. If you already own it, and you enjoyed it, I can't see a reason not to get it. But yeah, not a reason to pick up the original. The reason to pick up the original is the original. I think it's a good game.
Gotcha. You could live with it, live without it. Cool.
Yeah.
Do we know much about Avowed since they announced it a year ago? Because I was trying to think of what Obsidian has been up to, other than Outer Worlds DLC, and I remember they announced Avowed.
Oh, I vaguely remember that.
Like I think it was around when Microsoft bought them, or maybe a little bit after. But it's because I think, Jono, you mentioned what have they been doing besides Outer Worlds, and I don't know anything about that game other than its title, I think.
As I understand it, Avowed is going to be a first-person RPG. They're going to set it in the same world as their hit series Pillars of Eternity.
Right.
And I mean, because it's Obsidian, obviously people are going to be, because Obsidian did Fallout New Vegas, people are going to be looking at this and they're going to be probably calling it Obsidian's version of Elder Scrolls. Yeah. But I personally hope, like, they are not, from my understanding, this is not going to be a AA game. This is going to be a full-blown AAA RPG experience. So I don't think we're going to be hearing anything about this for at least, I don't know, maybe a year.
Maybe this
next
E3,
year.
though.
I mean, they might mention it this year's E3, but I think anything they're going to show at this year's E3 is not going to be. It's going to be a proof of concept more so than actual gameplay. I might be wrong about that, but I feel like this might be a little ways in the future. We haven't heard anything about it for quite some time. So now that they're done the Outer Worlds, their focus will obviously be falling onto this game.
And I mean, you compared it to Elder Scrolls, which I think is fair, but Pillars of Eternity is definitely their version of a Baldur's Gate, or one of those old Infinity Engine games. So I mean, it's a little reductive to say that Obsidian sort of takes popular Western RPGs and delivers their own interpretation of them over and over. But they're at least good at it. I really liked my time with Pillars of Eternity, and I haven't played Outer Worlds, but I'm at least, like the Mass Effect part of my brain is at least curious about it. So, good on them. Hope Avowed's good.
I hope it is too, and hopefully they give it the time it needs to actually be good.
Yeah, I mean, if they can make the sword fighting combat more fun than anything that's been in Skyrim or any of the Elder Scrolls before, then it's already going to be heads and tails above that, because that's why I go bows in that game. It's just so drab, just swinging a sword.
If you use a sword in Elder Scrolls, you're playing it wrong, Greg.
Clearly, I should be using a mass of cabbages that I roll down on unsuspecting villagers. Oh, mods. At any rate, what else have you been playing, Sollosi? Or has it mostly just been our topical game of the episode?
Before we go into that, I have mostly been playing games dedicated for another podcast. I
may have heard of that podcast.
Right. It's so you can listen to Retro Encounter if you want to see what games I've been playing for most of 2021. But I've also been bitten by a gacha bug, somewhat unfortunately. In January, Square Enix released Dragon Quest Tact, which is the second Dragon Quest gacha. The other one, Dragon Quest of the Stars, I think is still around, but I'm not really interested in it. But Dragon Quest Tact is basically a mobile RPG where you recruit monsters from the Dragon Quest world and do a silly story where you're trying to help a village of monsters thrive and survive and enter a monster tournament. It's it's a fun time wasting kind of game. The combat is grid based, kind of like Fire Emblem Heroes. You collect Dragon Quest monsters and level them up and level up their rank and level up their awakening rank, and there's a bunch of ways to throw time and hours and dollars into them. And I think that most of the gameplay stuff is pretty good. Like the monsters themselves look cool and cute and animate nicely. The combat itself is not bad. The different customization options like weapons and armor and skills is those systems are reasonably deep for this kind of game. But it is limited by a stamina stat that you only get unless you use tokens or spend money, there's only so much activities you can do in a given day. And the actual gacha elements themselves, like the drop rates and how many times you can try to roll for new monsters, and the rarity of those rolls for new monsters, those are pretty heinous. I think that your chances of getting an S rank monster on a roll is 3%, which feels low. And
I mean, that sounds high, but yeah,
it's
usually it's like a 0.0 something or other, but yeah.
Yeah, but like they don't give you a lot of pulls, and the chances for good monsters on pulls are pretty low. And once you clear the story content, which there's a medium amount of, and they give you a lot of nice rewards. But once you clear all of that, the trickle of tokens, or it's gems in this game, but like the rate at which you accrue gems is pretty slow. So I think like this is a fun game for the Dragon Quest things in it and for the basics of gameplay, but throwing a lot of money into it or a lot of time into it, I think the value of it plateaus pretty sharply. But I'm enjoying my time with it. I did get lucky with a couple pulls and have either 7 or 8 S rank monsters. I've only spent a little bit of money. There was a $1 like beginner's bonus that you could get in the first month that I did not mind throwing $1 in the tip jar for. But I don't recommend. Yeah, I don't recommend spending medium or large amounts of money into this game. But if you like seeing, king slimes animate and great dragons sort of do a little hustle dance every time you win a battle. This is as good a place as any for that.
I was really hoping it was going to go in the way of Dragon Warrior Monsters and such. But it's I guess the tact makes sense that it's much more tactical as opposed to like the little dungeon exploration Pokemon-esqueness.
There's a little bit of a Pokemon element because you are collecting monsters a lot,
right?
And if you collect a duplicate, your monster awakens. There's like a separate level for how many dupes you've gotten that boosts your monster. So you're not
okay.
You don't collect, like, if you pull a bunch of heal slimes, you don't have 5 heal slimes. You have a heal slime with an awakening rank of 5 or
stars or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a number rank and a regular level and an awakening rank, and there's just a bunch of ways to invest time and money into this game. That's
exactly.
And
it sounds gotcha.
And those, yeah, exactly. And like those parts of the game aren't bad, but the pace of stamina and the pace of accruing gems and the low chances of getting good monsters in the gacha, those things are bad. So I recommend this game as spending $0 to $1 to see monsters on your phone, but don't really recommend it beyond that.
$0 to $1 out of $0 to $1. Brian or Nicholas, have you been bitten by the gacha bug, or like are you gonna get into Tactor?
I have never really been able to get into like the gacha games, even when I've been excited for them. Like there was that Saga, the Saga franchise gacha that I love that franchise, but
Dan said good things about it.
It just feels like this. I feel like if I've played one gacha game, that's pretty much every gacha game out there. You do your pulls, you level your guys, and it never really feels like it amounts to anything. So I feel like everything just loses steam really fast for me. Like,
it's gotta have the right thing to stick.
Yeah, like I need more pushing me forward than like, oh, I got a rare resource, so now I can bump this guy. Now his attack is +3 more. Like, I know that's, your basic tenets for RPGs in general, but like, these never really feel like they have weight to them.
It's got to have the story to support it, or some sort of PvP element to support it.
The only time I've gotten into a gacha game besides this was a few months getting into Final Fantasy Brave Exvius in probably 2016 or 2017.
Oh yeah,
around when that was new. And the story in that game was actually shockingly good for being a mobile phone gacha, but the really it's just incredibly slow RPG progression with elements of like playing a slot machine. That makes me wonder if I have a gambling problem or not. That's the overall feeling.
It was Exvius like traditional turn-based? Or is, rather, because it still exists.
Yeah, but basically it's your Final Fantasy characters line up on the right side to defeat enemies lined up on the left side.
I get confused by because there's also Opera Omnius, and I think I was melding the two for a while. And
Opera Omnia is a Dissidia spinoff. But then there was a second Brave Exvius that launched, I think, last year.
Yeah, and that's the one I'm pretty hardcore in. It's the only gacha game right now that I play on a daily basis.
Right.
I was surprised at how much complexity was in Brave Exvius for a gacha game. Usually they keep those games pretty simple, but I remember when I tried Brave Exvius, you had your 6 party members, equipment, magic, limit breaks. It's a lot for a gacha game compared to the only one I've ever really gotten into was Fire Emblem Heroes. And that game's a lot simpler, so I was surprised when I tried Exvius.
Yeah, War of the Visions is also pretty complicated.
War of the Visions, that's the name of the second Brave Exvius that I couldn't remember. But the I mean, there's so many gacha out there, and I think the reason that there's been such a glut of them the past several years is because they make money, and because they'll catch a couple whales and catch a couple casual players and last a couple of years until people lose interest, and then by that time they're ready to make a new one. And
it's a good quick cash grab.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not that quick, but because I think there really is a lot. Yeah, there really is a lot of effort putting into the good ones because it's a competitive space. But I like Dragon Quest Tact. I don't think when in the moment of playing it, I don't think it's a bad game, but I think it is bad if you get too deep into it and you see how slow the crawl is after you get through the initial story mode and spend most of the free gems they give you. It's so I don't know how much longer I'll play it, but right now I just like having it as a time waster and looking at my Dragon Lord and Great Dragon and probably other dragons, dancing around on the victory screen.
How many advertisements for Raid Shadow Legends have you watched to get free currency?
None, but when I was playing a couple of years ago, when I was playing the mobile version of the zombie RPG Sunny, I watched a significant number of Raid Shadow Legends commercials.
I remember I bought into it for a bit because there was a cross promotion, and I was like, I'll get some free visions, but it was like just far too much time investment to. Like, no.
Dragon Quest Tactics doesn't have advertisements, but if you play a mobile game with ads or watch certain corners of YouTube, you know more than a casual amount about Raid Shadow Legends, which is maybe the most generic name for a video game I've ever encountered.
It was surprisingly fun, but I just didn't need more of that. It was just, yeah. I like War of the Visions. It's pretty great, and we'll talk about it more in another time, I'm sure, because it's coming up on its 1-year anniversary, and it's giving me a lot of free stuff, and I like it. I just want Ramza back. It's all I want. I had an error on mine where there was an update error that essentially blanked my account, so I had to restart, but because I hadn't linked my account to my Google account, all my stuff was lost, so I had to basically restart, which sucked, and I lost a bunch of my Final Fantasy Tactics characters I had gotten from those promotional events. But I got Cecil right now. He's pretty badass, so I can't complain.
Which one?
Is
he a Paladin or a Black Knight? Okay.
It's Paladin one. At any rate, and to our new fellows on the show, what have you been playing? Brian, what's going on with you?
Yeah, I just finished Ys 9 over the weekend, which was actually my first Ys game, so that was pretty cool. I loved the gameplay. I thought that was awesome, especially as you got later into the game and some of the bosses started to be more unique and needed you to change up the gameplay a little bit. In hindsight, I wish I had played on a higher difficulty because I found on normal mode, you get to a point where you don't really have to engage with the mechanics of the game. Like, you get a character that has a big spinning attack, and I could just use that to kill everything after about 10 hours. But the gameplay was still really fun. The Grimwald Nox sequences, which are the big new thing in this one, where you go into a portal and fight waves of enemies, were fun the first couple times, but there's a lot of them. I think you do more than 20 by the time the game's done. And they keep adding little things to it, like you get allies that do attacks every so often and structures that give you little buffs. So by the end of the game, there's like 14 things that go on every few seconds, and it becomes really visually cluttered. But overall, I thought the gameplay pretty much carried the game. The story... I think the story of Falcom games are getting a little formulaic for me, where we have all these chapter-based games where it's you start a chapter, do a bunch of side quests, and then a main quest, and I think that works for the Trails of series because most of these chapters are in new locations where you do these little side quests, like you help a shop out, and you're learning about the culture of this new area. But in Ys, you're pretty much in the same place the whole time. So these side quests just don't really escalate or get more interesting from the beginning of the game, so by the end I was really wishing I could skip them, but you have to do at least some of them. So I found that to get a little dull by the end.
The trailsification of the Ys stories really began in Ys 8, and 8 and 9 definitely feel like a Cold Steel game, and I think it's because the Falcom producer that runs Cold Steel took over Ys around that time. But I basically agree. Like the Ys 9 story is really, really awesome in like the last 2 chapters, but for 3/4 of the game, it's let's do some side quests. So here's a new corner of the city. We got to do some Grimwald Nox stuff, and I mean the shopping district isn't that much different from the main district kind of deal. But once you get to a dungeon and get into the combat of Ys, that's the fun part of Ys 9. I finished the game about a month ago and wrote the RPG fan review for Ys 9. But I thought it was like the action parts were great as Brian said, but it drags a bit when you're stuck in in the city and doing one too many Grimwald Nox segments.
Yeah, I also think that Yakuza Like a Dragon has ruined side quests in other games for me. Where in that game, you get repeating characters in side quests. Side quests are sometimes like 2 or 3 quests long, and you get a little story in them. And I just hate going back to games where you're doing like the rescue a cat from a tree type side quests that are totally isolated from everything else in the game.
To be fair, Kiryu has rescued many a cat from many a tree.
Oh yeah, it's not about what you're doing, they just make it interesting in Yakuza.
Yeah.
But when you rescue cats in Yakuza Like a Dragon, you eventually get to summon a giant tiger into battle with your cell phone. So
That's worth it.
That's a bit more of a reward than whatever cat rescuing you do in East 9. I don't remember. Is there a cat in East 9? I think there is a cat you find. Right?
That was just an example. I don't remember a cat. The most egregious one I can think of was the one where you're just finding the decorations for the city, which isn't that bad in a vacuum, but it comes right after a really fast-paced scene where I want more of the story, and then they're like, go find decorations.
Yeah, I think I rescued a cat in the other game I'm playing right now, and I was conflating those by mistake.
Yeah, it sounds, from what I've heard, there is a definite formulaicness to Ys, as it kind of has been going over the years.
That's an exaggeration. But it like East 9, it just feels like it's spinning its wheels for a little bit in the when you're just unlocking more of the city in the middle of the game. That I think that East 9 has an awesome story for like the last couple chapters, but drags around the middle. But calling it formulaic, especially when the each East game really feels different from its predecessors, and East has gone through sort of 3 different eras of gameplay types. I mean, calling it formulaic is I wouldn't use that word, but East 9 does feel a lot like East 8, and you are stuck in this fake version of Paris for most of the game. It's I mean, have you played any recent East games, Greg?
No, I haven't. I've just been what I've been hearing. That's all. It's all hearsay.
You could keep going and play the first one. Just like really, really dive into playing the first installments of all these classic RPG series since you finished the Zelda.
Well, I feel like, was it the first one of East that you should be avoiding? I forget now.
I mean, maybe. I think the first East game is one of the worst ones, but it's only
I think I had heard that from you.
Yeah, okay. It's only like 3 or 4 hours, and it as a history lesson, it's not so bad. It's not so bad, but as a
okay.
I mean, I would play most of the other East games before going to the first 2.
Good to know. I'll take the recommendation. What have you been playing, Nicholas, before we get into the episode proper?
I'm going through a couple of things right now. On the minor side, I'm still working through the first Neo. I have no idea why it's taken me so long to get through that game. I mean, I got it when it first came out, and it's just been a crawl. I will play it for a little bit, and then I will just put it away for like a few months. And I think part of it is I'm a huge Dark Souls fan, and I think the real like beauty of those games is in its world design, where like everything feels kind of interconnected, and you can be way out in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you'll open a gate and you'll be like 2/3 back to the beginning of the game, and it's like, how did they design it like that? But
yeah, I do love that aspect of the Souls stuff.
Yeah, and like Neo it's just kind of stage based, so you pick your stage and you go through. I mean, it's still neat. There's like minor aspects, but it's all very self-contained.
So do you think it's more of an issue, I guess, like with expectation for you?
I think probably my main issue is that I'm trying to compare it. I mean, it's difficult not to compare it to a Souls game because that's the obvious inspiration on it.
It handles every other way like it.
But I think it's just not as gripping. Like, I'm not as invested into the world lore as I am the Souls series. So it's very easy for me to put it on the back burner and come back to it later. It is very accessible. Like, I pick it back up and within 10 minutes, like I'm back in and I know what's going on. And I would contribute that to its, stage-like design, Because if you don't remember what you're doing in Dark Souls and you come back to it 3 months later, you're
right. You're
lost.
Where the hell do I go?
I don't know a lot about Neo. I know that it's the Team Ninja Koei people that made the modern Ninja Gaiden games, but I sort of felt like this is a Souls-like that's set in a sort of samurai like Japanese demon kind of aesthetic, but then the real Souls team made Sekiro a year or two later, and people seem to like that more. Is that an unfair perception?
Well, I haven't made it to Sekiro yet, but I can almost guarantee that from everything that I've heard, it's a more well-designed game, and I would be willing to bet it's, again, because of the world, like speculation because I haven't played it, but I imagine it's one huge interconnected world again versus pick a stage and go there.
Right.
And Neo is based off of real world history. It is based off the like Sengoku era of Japan, but with just like demons added. And I guess the demons come because there's this dude from England. I don't want to get into the story too much for anyone that hasn't played it, but the arrival of a particular person, I guess, brings these demons out.
It's not Commodore Perry, is it?
No, but that
Okay.
would be interesting. But that's kind of the back burner game for me. The main game I'm working through is Yakuza 5.
Oh, yes, please tell us about Yakuza 5.
And I've actually been just like blasting through the Yakuza series. My recent love for that series started with Zero, as I'm sure I won't say most, but a lot of people's did.
That's what happened to me.
But I did play the originals back on PS2, and they were rough. But when I found out that that series kind of persevered throughout the years and it fell off my radar, and I picked it back up, I absolutely love it. But I feel like Yakuza 5 is very interesting in that it feels like everybody has like a side job. And like Kiryu is a taxi driver, and Sajima is like a hunter in the mountains.
There's so much content in the game; it's mind blowing.
Oh, it's massive, and like it made me realize I could play a game that has nothing to do with the Yakuza. It could be built on the Yakuza engine, and it could just be weird jobs in Japan, and I would love it. Like. I totally did not expect the like hunter in the mountains bit for a Yakuza game, where like you're in this remote, isolated village, and you're like hunting for food for this village, and like they don't trust you, and you like eventually win them over by like.
That's how you do it. You got to win them over with bear meat.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I married my wife.
We live in Canada.
Now it makes sense. And I think I'm about halfway through. I'm playing as Haruka now. And,
Don't. I'll tell you what. Sollosi's on the verge of playing this. When Sollosi plays it, both of you come on and we will talk about this section for the entire episode.
Okay.
I'm also going through a Yakuza journey right now, but I am just early in Yakuza 4 before putting it on hold for podcast games and other site-related things.
Gotcha.
Nicholas, we will talk about this. I promise. I don't know. Actually, just
I've
tell
heard
me
a
how
bit
you
about
feel.
it. It's pretty funny.
Just tell me about how you feel about it. How do you feel about her section?
I'm enjoying it. Again, I think it's the like bizarre jobs. Like I was not expecting it, and I was like, okay, this is very different. Yet I'm entertained, and like my real goal is to get to Like a Dragon. Like I still have to work through 6, and I'm thinking of undertaking the monumental task of 100%ing Yakuza 5 because I'm really enjoying that one. Like, surprisingly, because most people gravitate towards 0, and I thought 0 was really good. I think I made it to like 55% completion rate on that. And like, for anyone that doesn't know, completing a Yakuza game 100% is just a daunting task.
You'll have to play a lot of mahjong, a lot of shogi, a lot of East Asian gambling hall games.
It's very meta.
Not just that. I think I also hit around 55 or 60% on Yakuza 0, and that was me playing a game for 70 hours. So, and not even touching mahjong. So I can only imagine what you're in for, Nicholas.
I feel like you'd want to go down to your local community center with like your TV and like your PlayStation and just set it up for the ladies and be like, have at it. I'll be back in like 5 hours.
So long as Sollosi doesn't 100% a Yakuza game, we know is that his gambling problem is under control, essentially.
Very true, because I don't think you can play this game without gambling some. Like, I'm pretty sure at times they force you to sit down and be like, all right, now you're going to play blackjack. Well, I don't know if blackjack is ever... I know there's several games where you have to sit there and it's like related to the story to get through.
You have to do some Chohan gambling in Yakuza 1 or Kiwami 1, and there's a big shogi there's a shogi sequence in Yakuza 2 where you have to infiltrate a shogi parlor, but I think and solve a shogi puzzle, but I don't think they make you play. I
don't think they make you play either. I think you just show up there and then people start shooting.
Right, yeah. But you definitely have to play Chohan, which is I could be getting the name wrong, which is basically odds or evens with knives pointed at your hands.
Fun fact, I actually learned mahjong because of the Yakuza series.
I hear it's a wonderful game to play if you know
feel
what
like
you're
you're not
doing.
alone.
But yeah, that's my two things recently. Really looking forward to Like a Dragon. Like, I played the demo on the Japanese PSN. Ever since then, I was like, well, I can't wait for this. And I also just desperately hope that the studio, I can't remember the name of the studio currently, but
Ryuga Gotoku Studio.
Yeah, please release Ishin and Kenzin in the West.
Those are the two samurai games made by the same studio, set in Kyoto hundreds of years ago, and with Yakuza characters from the modern games basically taking on new names and identities. So like basically Majima's in those games, but he's a different person, but with just the same face and actor. But yeah, and they were PS3 games that came out in the late 2000s, early 2010s. They especially the second one look pretty incredible. But I'm not sure they've ever sniffed a Western release before. But now that it has a new level of popularity, that could happen. So there is hope.
There was some news about it a few weeks ago, actually. The producer said that there's a possibility that they might be released in the West, but they need to be remade and not just ported. Okay. Now, I agree with that for Kenzan, because it's basically on the same engine as Yakuza 4, 3 and 4, which, are playable, very playable, but it's certainly not like cutting edge. Ishin is on the same. It was the first game done on the Yakuza 5 engine, which eventually also did 0 and
Kiwami 1.
Kiwami 1. Yeah, Kiwami 1. So I think that is a very playable. I still think those are playable games. And also there is a fan translation that is in the works for it. That's apparently quite a ways along. Now, who knows whether or not that'll actually happen, because that's the kind of thing that happens with fan translations. But if it does happen, I would be very excited.
We can only hope.
Yeah. Also, it has some of the the coolest looking heat moves I've ever seen. I've watched some of the heat moves on YouTube, and it's especially with his fighting style with the gun and sword at the same time.
I think that's only an Ishin, but I know what you mean. Those do look cool.
Yeah. The point is there is more Yakuza out there that we don't have our hands on yet.
But you want it.
Yeah, I know. That's the same thing as like Ace Attorney. It's just they don't really see the point in releasing games that are specific towards the Japanese audience to Western audiences, because they're afraid to lose their shirts, and they might be right about that.
Yeah. Are you still holding out hope for the PSP Black Jaguar games?
The first one actually got a fan translation. It just got released a few weeks ago.
I think that was the first time I'd ever even heard of them, was seeing the news pop up about a fan translation. It's they are made by the Yakuza team. Ryuga Gotoku Studio, but they're about a like punk kid in Kamurocho entering like pit fighting tournaments.
Whoa.
As they
So-
do.
Yeah, so like I think all the fights are arena fights, but it's it's a weird, cool looking thing that I'm not sure I need to play. But I'm now that I'm a born again Yakuza fanboy, I'm at least curious about. But
That gives me Bouncer vibes.
yeah, in general, there is fan demand within the community for Kenzan and Ishin, but maybe not for Kurohyo or Black Jaguar or whatever they're called.
Yeah. Nicholas, what are you playing them on? Out of curiosity, are you playing them on PlayStation or PC? Or I guess Xbox?
PlayStation.
Okay, PlayStation versions. Mine are on the PlayStation as well. Although 6 and Judgment are coming out in just a few weeks on the PC.
Yeah, I don't
Which
think
is-
I have a computer good enough to run that.
I mean, you have a PlayStation, so you don't need a PC. At least not for Yakuza.
Well, that's everything I guess everyone's playing at the moment, aside from what we've all been very heavily hinting at, and I'm sure the title of this episode will have given away at this point. But we've all been playing some RPGs with underlined titles. But we had all that pile of news that got dropped on us, what was it now, 3-4 weeks ago now, and there's a lot of good things coming up. We're not going to go too much into that, but one thing that Square Enix dropped on us was the Project Triangle strategy demo back on February 17th. And yeah, if you like your underlying RPGs, it's shaping up to be a good one. I mean, looks like strategy Octopath, for lack of a better comparison.
You can't really call them underlined title RPGs because Bravely Second does not have an underlined title.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, only Bravely Default, Bravely Default 2, Octopath Traveler, and the new Triangle strategy do. So
I guess that makes it more of like a side adventure, I guess, with End Layer.
Sort of. I mean, I refer to them as Team Asano games because Tomoya
fair.
Asano is the exec producer on all of them, and also was on the FF3 and 4 DS remakes and what's it called? Final Fantasy IV Heroes of Light. But
Yeah.
We're the topics we were dancing around were Triangle Strategy and Bravely Default 2.
But yeah, has everyone had a chance to, or has anyone wanted to try the Triangle strategy demo?
Yeah, I loved the Triangle strategy demo. I was really excited of it from the announcement because I have a mild Fire Emblem addiction. So I love when other strategy RPGs come out in between releases. And I loved Octopath too, so I was very excited when they announced this.
It looked great, and I was super excited to finally get into the demo. It took me a couple days, but yeah, I really liked what I've played of it so far. I know that Wes Elif brought up some of the accessibility issues with color blindness, and I could see where that could be an issue with like seeing things on the map. But otherwise, it's very neat.
I have to admit, I haven't played it yet. I probably will at some point. My immediate impression of it, like just seeing the trailer, was not as positive as I was hoping, because hang on, yeah, I'm just bringing up a video of it here so I can look at it. The thing that really blew me away when I first saw the Project Octopath Traveler trailer years ago was that it looked like how I remember a Super Nintendo game looking, but it wasn't. It was like, it was it's 2D HD graphics, and
Yeah.
It was just absolutely gorgeous. And when I look at this, it really does resemble resembles Tactics. It resembles Final Fantasy Tactics, which looks really, really good. But there's something about the art style that I just don't find quite as impressive in a pseudo 3D space like the Tactics games has. Whereas the solid pixel art 2D/3D environments of Octopath Traveler just blew my mind.
That's
This
fair,
is entirely me being super shallow because, again, I haven't played the game yet. I've just seen footage of it. And I mean, do not get me wrong, it does not look bad. But the style of Octopath Traveler in a 3D space, I feel like almost takes away from the effect that they were pushing with the original game. But I might be wrong about that.
I get you though, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, having played the demo, I would agree with you that the presentation is a small step down from Octopath. I still think it looks good, but I don't think it looks quite as good as Octopath. Same with the soundtrack. At least what we have in the demo is good, but doesn't quite reach the admittedly lofty standards set by Octopath.
Right.
Yeah, to me this looks like it almost looks like a late gen PlayStation game, whereas Octopath Traveler obviously looked, intentionally was looking like a Super Nintendo game on modern hardware.
It feels kind of like the best version of a pixel version, like an older version of in the Fire Emblem series, with trying to marry the 2D and the 3D before the transition to a full 3D environment, world, and character base.
Well, I mean, the isometric camera angle makes me think Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre ahead of Fire Emblem. And especially since, to be very, very reductive, if Bravely Default is updated FF3, Bravely Default 2 is updated FF5, Octopath Traveler's kind of an updated, Romancing Saga because of the multiple characters and the intertwining paths, then this is really clearly an updated Tactics Ogre because and maybe this is fresh in my mind because I played Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together for the first time last summer, but just the way that the camera angle sets, the way the cameras the characters animate, and the different choice elements battle to battle really make this feel like a Tactics Ogre pastiche. And Nikki Fakuri wrote a really nice preview in February when this game came out, and that is positive. But I agree that just the way that the HD sprites looked in Octopath Traveler, and the way the city spaces were in 2D, but for more were more like sort of diorama style, where you were sort of where the buildings popped a little bit more. I agree, does look a little bit better than the isometric angle buildings in Triangle Strategy. But again, this is just a demo following a trailer that we got in the Nintendo Direct about a month ago.
And they're asking for feedback.
Yeah. The final version of the game probably won't quite look and feel like this. I think Bravely Default 2 feels considerably better than its early demos as well.
Yeah.
So again, it's cool that they're making this, especially cool for strategy RPG fans. Whether you have an FF Tactics background like Greg or a Fire Emblem background like Brian, but this is promising. It gives us at least something to look forward to in 2022.
Kind of an observation on the graphics. One point, I only played the first battle in the demo, and I skipped the story because I know this is eventually a game that I'm gonna want to play. And it kind of drops you into the middle of it. So I feel like I don't want to know what's going on. I just want to check out the game for what it is. I will note that things feel darker. Like Octopath Traveler, there's you have these shimmering coastlines and light kind of playing little rays coming in. And I feel like the graphics engine, obviously very similar, if not, well, it is the same, but I feel like they're pushing for more of a darker
aesthetic.
Yeah, because everything felt like indoors and very torchy, and then that first demo fight, you're on this bridge and it's raining, and that kind of ties in with Final Fantasy Tactics was a very dark, brooding game.
It felt very much like that, that opening church sequence. I kind of had those vibes.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna hold out and hope there is some of those shimmering, because that's where the graphics engine really shines, is when it can just
shine,
really dazzle you with the landscape, and also something we're missing is the gorgeous sprite work in the battles that Octopath Traveler had. Because now we're dealing with just the regular sized people.
Not the big flashy bosses and monsters and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely get where you're coming from, where the graphics is not as impressive, because I feel like we're kind of missing pieces of what that engine can do.
That's fair.
In Octopath Traveler, the world was basically a large pizza sliced into 8 slices, and each slice each slice was a different biome, with the monsters getting tougher and the town shops getting more powerful as you move towards the crust. But one of those slices was the was the sort of winter area of the game where Flames Grace is one of the towns. And I think that town had the sort of dimmer lighting punctuated with lanterns and fireplaces with that kind of lighting. But and the like the beach area has these beautiful shimmering waves, and there's much more brightness in the Highlands area and the desert area, where this game is only just like 2 or 3 sequences worth of content where it is all sort of dimly lit, and it doesn't look bad, but I think that like if you know the complete experience of Octopath Traveler, then comparing it to the demo of Triangle Strategy makes Octopath seem way prettier. But I would withhold judgment on how everything about this game looks until it comes out, because again it's more, I think it's more than a year away, but at least it's a very promising demo, and it's cool that they dropped the demo minutes after announcing the game. That's a boss move.
It's a very Nintendo Direct thing to have. One thing I will say that I really hope does get fixed, and you may have dodged this bullet by skipping most of the story, but Sarah Noah. Oh my gosh. I mean, a lot of folks in our Slack at RPG Fan were complaining about the voice work. Overall, it's okay, but Sarah Noah I cannot forgive. He is phoned in AF. Like, he is not committed to any of his lines. And like, speaking as an actor, like, you could just hear that. There's the odd one that's a while, I'm like, oh, there. That was actually good. I believed him there, but everything else, it's like, hey, yeah, we should fight for our rights. What?
Yeah, I agree. The voice acting definitely, I appreciate that it's fully voice acted.
Yeah.
Because I don't always like it when RPGs do the thing where just the beginning of the text box is voice acted. But yeah, some of the performances are better than others.
Yeah, like most of them I'm pretty happy with, but him, maybe that is because Sarah Noah's actor is just so, again, phoned in, and maybe that is symptomatic of what they were trying to put together during a pandemic and what the limitations were. I don't know, but it just, do better, man.
Yeah, part of it for me too is they write in this old English style, and I really don't like it when RPGs do it. It's part of why Hanit's story was really frustrating for me in Octopath, where they write in like this Shakespearean way.
Right.
And I find it off-putting, personally.
I don't mind it so much as long as like they're committed to it and as long as they pronounce things properly. It does sound a bit weird since obviously traditionally we're used to hearing it with an English accent, and when it's North American accents delivering the words, generally it does sound a bit odd, but I don't know. I don't mind it if they're committed to it and they do it well. It's just when they don't pronounce things properly that I'm like, didn't do the work and the research. But I get you. That's something I think has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way too.
You know what has some you know what has some really great acting in it though?
I mean, a lot of things, but I think the next game we're talking about, which I was gonna, Bravely Default 2, is that what you're going for?
Yes, it is. I could bring up Yakuza again, but let's go with Bravely Default 2.
We could. Let's go back to, back February 26th now was when we got Bravely Default 2 finally. Has everybody here played Bravely Default or Bravely Second?
I have only played about half of Bravely Default 1 and the demo for Bravely Default 2.
That's all you need.
I have not played any of the series.
Oh, you newcomer, so hopefully we'll convert you. And I think most folks know that Sollosi is a big fan, and Jono went through his whole travails with it last year.
Yeah.
Was that last year or was that 2019?
It was 2020, believe it or not.
I played each of them the year they came out, and but I bought my 3DS in 2014. So I think Bravely Default was the first or second game I bought for the 3DS.
It's a good game. I jumped on Bravely Default right away. Bravely Second I didn't pick up for many years later, and then I've only just started dabbling with it because I got bitten by the bug for Bravely Default 2. And I mean, the voice acting is great, but overall, this game so far is so good. I'm loving it so far. I mean, I enjoyed the demo and what they were presenting. It feels like some stuff got sharpened up a bit from that demo, and it's just a great game so far. Sollosi, you're playing it for the site. We'll let you kind of take the lead here.
Sure. Well, I finished the game a few days ago, so I know the sort of subversive tack they do with the end game. Avoiding spoilers for the previous ones. Because I know I don't know how much of them our listening audience has played, but basically these games are turn-based RPGs with job systems that have a lot of similarities to certain early Final Fantasy games. I think Bravely Default is a lot like FF3 NES in some ways, and Bravely Default 2 is a lot like FF5 in several ways, because you're collecting elemental crystals. They each one of your characters is a hero chosen by the crystal, but in Bravely Default 1, combat is round based, with each character getting one action per round and planning around each round of combat. While in Bravely Default 2,
like 4 Warriors of Light or whatever. Or 4
oh
Heroes of
yeah,
Light.
yeah. Final Fantasy IV Heroes of Light was a Final Fantasy spin-off by the people that would eventually make Bravely Default, but that game was for DS, and all of the jobs were little hats called crowns. And there are a lot of similarities, but or there is a through line from 4 Heroes of Light to Bravely Default, but it's I think they've made some meaningful steps in going from those, but also Bravely Default 1 and Bravely Second both have random encounters that you can adjust with a slider, whether you want them all the time or turned off completely, while Bravely Default 2 has enemies visible in the field that you can maneuver around or try to strike to get a jump on them, like a lot of recent Tales of games or Persona games from 3 onwards.
Super Mario and Luigi, Superstar Saga. That's what I thought.
Sure.
It's a me, Elvis.
Yeah, oh man. Elvis might be the standout in this game. The 4 main characters are Seth, Gloria, Elvis, and Adele, who meet very suddenly, semi-randomly, but then they go on a rescue mission right at the beginning of the game that eventually has them teaming up as 4 destined heroes that are trying to save the world from a vague threat called the Knight's Nexus.
Like a D&D campaign.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so much like Final Fantasy V. Like you go from kingdom to kingdom. Each kingdom has some kind of issue with one of these elemental crystals at the center of it. In chapter like you sort of meet all the characters in a prologue. But then the immediate chapter after that, chapter 1, is a desert town that's been mysteriously flooded, and it's like, oh, the water crystal is somewhere flooding the town with its water supply. They wanted it to be the water supply of the town, but now it's gone out of hand, and you sort of have to like find the crystal and right the wrong of the town, going town to town until the story sort of broadens around a central theme towards the end. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here.
Yeah, but that makes sense.
Yeah, but in general, it's a find the crystals, unlock new jobs, and like play around with turn-based mechanics and this really fun job system. And oh boy, is the job system fun! And oh boy, does the game throw some challenges at you, because especially in I don't know. I think it got a little bit easier towards the end of the game, where like I think I was getting stronger at a faster rate than the bosses were getting stronger at one point. But around chapter 1, 2, 3, there are some genuinely challenging turn-based fights in this game.
What difficulty did you do your playthrough on?
I did it on normal. I always sort of the first time I run through a game, I always pick normal, and then If I really, really want to replay something, I'll consider going up to a higher difficulty. But
I went hard and I found it really challenging. Even just that first Asterix battle, like I scraped by. I had to wait for like the white mage to run out of MP, and then I finally started making headway. That's how it was. It was tough, but I like it. But it brings a lot more strategy, I find. But then I went down to casual just to try and make progress for capture, and even then, fighting the bard was challenging.
I thought that the only playing on normal, I thought that the first couple Asterisk fights weren't a problem at all. But then the Beastmaster Asterisk, I think, was the first time I died and started having to restructure everything. And then from there on, I think almost every story fight I died. I either struggled too much or died once and then had to retry. Or maybe not all of them, but for several of them. Can I walk through one fight where I thought was one of the hardest, just to give you an idea of what was going through my brain?
Yeah, you
Please?
can. And folks, spoilers. If
Okay,
just heads up, jump ahead if you
all
need
right,
to.
sure. There is a boss fight against a berserker, and a lot of the big fights in the game are against basically villains holding a job crystal called an asterisk, and after you beat them, you get their asterisk and can use that class. So this is for the berserker crystal, or berserker asterisk. I scan him at the beginning of the fight, see he's weak against water. It's like, sweet, I can have my black mage cast a blizzard spell, and that'll do great damage. And so maybe my second turn of the game, I throw a blizzard spell, and then it says counterattacks. It says water damage, super effective. Boss counterattacks all water skills with crescent moon, and then he wiped out my team in 2 hits. I basically tried to grab the cheese in the mousetrap by seeing he was vulnerable to water, and then breaking my fingers on it.
It's neat having those though. It definitely adds a fun little wrench in the strategy.
Yeah, so then revisiting it, all right, so I'll look for his other weaknesses, because there's 6 weapon types and 7 elemental magic types in this game, and every enemy in the game, including all the bosses, are weak against at least 1 or 2 things. It's okay, I'll try to hit his other weaknesses. But I can't hit him with water spells, otherwise he'll do this giant counterattack. And I did some setup things, I think you had recently gotten the Bard, Beastmaster, and Thief jobs before fighting Berserker, so it's okay, the Bard skills are pretty useful in this game for boosting my defense. And Beastmaster is pretty useful because you can use the muzzle skill to try to lower his attack, I think, and that was helpful. But But by scanning him, I realized, and trying to struggle my second time fighting him, I realized that, he has the Berserk status on that increases all of his damage by 50%, and also reduces his defense by 30%. So I think I died that time also, but then when on try 3 or 4, I went in with I adjusted my jobs, went in with a plan, boost my defense with a Bard, use a freelancer skill called Purge to remove his Berserk status, so he was taking a lot less damage, but also dealing way less damage. So my white mage could, or my person using white magic could heal to match the damage he was doing instead of getting overpowered all the time. And I eventually won. It took, I think, 4 tries, but these are the kind of boss fights they give you. Ones that are pretty challenging, sometimes based around a specific gimmick, but they give you so many tools in this powerful job system to suit your team and adjust your team for each fight. And I did a little bit of grinding in this game, but I don't think the grind is that necessary, because they give you so many tricks to both to level up quickly and deal with every encounter. And again, one of the defining gimmicks of the Bravely games is that you can use the command Brave to take an extra turn, or whenever you defend, you use a command called Default that gives you an extra turn that banks a future turn. So you can use Brave at the beginning of a fight to take 4 turns in a row, but then you're going to skip 3 turns, getting back to a neutral Brave default state. But if you default twice in a row,
defeat them.
Yeah. If you didn't defeat the enemy, if the battle's still going on, but if you default multiple times in a row, you can build up points that allow you to brave multiple turns in a row without that penalty. So, but enemies can do this too. So, in that Berserker fight, I was maybe struggling a little bit, but then he took 4 turns in a row and wiped out my party. And enemies get pretty crazy with their brave and default mechanics and their countering mechanics. Like fights near the end of the game will be like, enemies will get an extra brave point anytime you use any ability, or enemies will counter with poison every time you use a healing spell. Like the countering mechanics get so out of hand that by the end of the game, every enemy in the game is taking 3 or 4 turns in a row.
Ugh,
because
it really caught me off guard.
Yeah, because of all the brave they're accumulating. But anyway, so this game throws challenges at you, but gives you this fun system to play around with that makes all of these challenges surmountable in a way that feels really satisfying. And again, for most of the fights in the game, I would lose once, change my strategy, go in with a new approach, and then finally win. And it's super fun. I've beaten the game. I've started writing the review. Hopefully the review will be up by the time this episode airs, but it is going to have a mostly positive tone, except for a couple visual and quality of life elements that I think are a little frustrating. Jono, we talked about this separately off air a little bit.
Yeah, there are a few sections of the game that there are things that feel like they are, well, missing. I'll give you a good example. I think it's probably the best example. There are side quests in this game, quite a few of them, as a matter of fact.
Including finding a cat.
Including finding a cat, which is the fastest, most anticlimactic side quest might be in the game.
It really was.
Yeah. I think the cat is like one building over or something. It's a very straightforward cat locating quest.
But it was so drawn out for like just story purposes.
Yeah, it's more for comedy than anything. And that's what, there are side quests in the game that are literally fetch quests. It's like, here, go here, pick me up this thing, bring it back to me. There are side quests that are character specific where you learn more about your characters. And those are obviously my favorites. And then there are, monster fighting side quests. There's a whole bunch of them. This is my point. The thing is, they're all numbered. So you have like side quest 1 to, I don't know how many are in the game, probably about at least over 100, probably 150. They're all numbered. And you can keep track of your up to, is it 3? You can keep track up to 3 side quests at a time in your travelogue with markers. You can have more in there, but you can only keep track of 3 with markers. After you complete a quest, though, it's gone. There is no side quest tracker. So I'm not entirely certain why they're numbered, because you can't actually see what you have completed, how many you have left, which ones you still need to find.
Unless you're that's manually keeping track, I guess.
Unless you're manually keeping track of the spreadsheet, which I guess you could.
I tried. And then do you have your spreadsheet?
I have not, but there are some enterprising people on a number of game forums and subreddits that have made spreadsheets because of the lack of this. And similarly, if you're trying to collect every weapon or every piece of armor in the game, the spreadsheet will only fill out for the ones you've completed. So there's no way of knowing how many there are until you get the last number in the list. And also like things like there's a mini map for going around the world map, which is just a single continent, but no map in the menu for to see the entire region, and no mini maps in dungeons. It feels like things like the UI and quality of life elements were underdeveloped or have pieces missing,
and that's a little bit upsetting. Is not the right word. A little disappointing because of just how insanely robust a lot of those features were in Bravely Default and Bravely Default 2, especially like the diary.
Yeah, it sounds like that's just a little lighter now.
Yeah, Ring a Bell's diary I thought was a extraordinarily useful tool in those games for keeping track of.
Well, spoilers. It was D's.
No, he was carrying it around.
Actually, no, he does give it around. That's right. Well, I thought you said it was just when he found.
No, Ring a Bell's carrying it around, but it's called D's. It's called like D's tome or D's diary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean his diary, not in the sense that it's his diary writing stuff down, and I mean his diary in the sense that it's his. He's the one who has it in his pocket, and he's the one who references it.
Right.
But like in game, when you go into menus, like that thing was a treasure trove of information. And while this game does have, a lore section, which thankfully has a section that helps you keep track of the cards you've collected from the card game, which is something we'll get into, I suspect. It doesn't have anything for, the side quest weapons. It's a little weird. There's how many little omissions there are in this game of quality of life, things that I don't like. Obviously, I haven't designed the game, but they're just not there, and they feel like they should be.
That's fair. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that there wasn't that in the lore section. I haven't really been looking at it.
And the thing is, this game is so good about communicating things to the player, mostly. Like, when you go into each page for a job or a sub-job, it is pretty clear what every ability can do and how different abilities can interact. And in battle, if you go into an info screen for either the player or the enemy, it'll show you every single status effect that's happening, every boost that they're under. It'll really communicate what is happening in battle. That's how I was able to tell that the Berserker boss had the Berserk status and had to try to figure out a way to get rid of it.
And I really like that feature. It saves you having to try to remember and reference it that way.
Yeah, the game really does. The game really does incentivize you to use examine or magnifying glasses to examine enemies in a way like those are always options in like Final Fantasy games where you can to see how much HP he has left. But in this game, they really are, okay, if you do this, you're going to learn their weaknesses, you're going to see their HP, their MP, you're going to have all this information for future battles. So
and you can always reference it.
Yeah, good idea to scan them.
Yes, but it's weird that this game is so good at communicating information and really makes that an effort. And in this game, the menu is also a book, but it's a diary left by one of the characters, of Elvis's mentor, instead of just being mysteriously in the possession of one of your characters. But it's so good about communicating information sometimes and so bad about communicating it other times that it was annoying dealing with map stuff or side quest stuff or item list stuff. That I feel like this is the kind of thing this game should be awesome at, but it's a little bit of a letdown in, because almost everything else is great. The story is kind of a little simplified version of find the crystals, prevent the calamity, but it's a really fun version of that. You fight, I think, let's say 20 to 22 exaggerated NPC bosses over their jobs, and after you defeat them, a lot of them have dedicated side quests to learn more about them in future chapters. And I think the online fandom is can't decide whether Martha or Anihal is the more precious cinnamon roll, but I'm partial towards the big mustache night boy Lonsdale. These and Bravely Default and Bravely Second also had asterisk holders as major boss characters and as colorful NPCs, but I think that they're sort of better written in Bravely Default 2. Like I'm really liking the let's say the large majority of the asterisk holder NPCs, and the ones that are really malicious villains. I mean, they're despicable. Like I am once the evil plot takes shape in each of the first 3 towns, you really want to knock the daylights out of that boss. Especially, you know what I'm talking about, right, Jono?
Oh yes, I do.
Yeah, like what's going on in Wiswald and Rheimdall, and to maybe a lesser degree Savalon. It's like, I need to murder these people. This is the worst. But so like the character work is fun, the story stuff is fun. Bravely Default and Bravely Second famously have end game twists that are very subversive about the nature of what playing an RPG is, that are pretty exciting when you first encounter them. I'm trying to avoid spoilers, and that happens a little bit in Bravely Default 2, but not in quite as a time consuming way, and not quite as a mind blowing way. I think it's like the end game stuff in Bravely Default 2 is there, and it is pretty cool, but it's not quite as mind blowing as as what goes on in the previous 2 games. But it's still fun. Like this game is mostly a vehicle for this fun turn-based combat and job system that is evocative of Final Fantasy V. So specifically, to me, is the game that I think about the most with what's going on.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it,
especially since each character is identified by one of the crystals as their chosen, and I love the main characters. Like I think Elvis and Adele are completely delightful. Seth is a slightly more interesting version of Tiz. Gloria is a much less annoying version of Agnes, because again, both of them are women motivated by duty and attached to the crystals and very focused on the journey ahead. But Agnes got a little bit annoying, and Gloria is less annoying. Is my
her
personal
self-righteousness could be a bit much sometimes.
Yeah,
a little awful stupid.
Gloria never feels. Yeah. Gloria never feels like she thinks of herself as above anybody else.
Yeah. And Agnes did communicate that a little bit in Bravely in the first Bravely Default. Yeah, part of her journey was acknowledging that and realizing that the organization she was part of was part of the problem, sort of. But it's a little bit simpler in Bravely Default 2. Mm-hmm. Gloria is the princess of a fallen kingdom, and it's her sacred duty to recollect the crystals and prevent a calamity from occurring again. But the visuals in this game are a little interesting. I think they've had a mixed reception among fans. The backgrounds and like textures of the world are quite beautiful, but the character models are a little over smooth. Like you made a diorama with real bits of dirt and wood and leaves collected from the forest, but then you have these but you populate the diorama with dolls that are clearly plasticky. Like it's that kind of like the character models do not have the same richness as the environmental background details, but
They're very claymated.
But the costumes of the different jobs
are
so cool. I love playing dress up in this game. It's awesome. And the in the Thief asterisk, the two male characters have these like elaborate gaudy robes and bandanas, while the two women are dressed like as like in sort of society dresses, like they're infiltrating a party and robbing everyone blind.
Yeah, they look like they're about to break into a casino.
Yeah, and the Swordmaster job in Bravely Default was samurai themed and focused around counterattacks, while in Bravely Default 2 it's sort of like Scottish Highlander themed.
Oh, dope.
With barbarian furs, and instead of being only about counters, it's a stancy dancy job with either multiple attacks in one stance or counters in a second stance. So it's kind of like a Bravely Default 1 Swordmaster mixed with a Bravely 2nd Fencer. But like the job designs and costumes are so cool, and that was my favorite part of the game, in case my ramble rant hasn't already made that clear.
Yeah, it's shaping up great. Before we go too deep further, though, I wanted to ask Brian, because Brian, yeah, you've only played the demo bit, and I'm sure some of this might be whetting your appetite now for more, and we're also trying carefully not to spoil Bravely Default for you if you do go back to it. But yeah, what was your vibe, I guess, coming out of the demo? And did you play the most recent demo or the first one? And what was your vibe coming out?
The most recent demo.
Gotcha. So you got almost the shape of the game.
Yeah. And my experience with the demo was more positive than I expected. Bravely Default has always been an awkward series for me because I love the way all of the marketing assets look, and then I get in the game and I hate the character art style. Just doesn't do it for me. Everything else is beautiful, but I just don't like how the characters look, and it's like a
almost
big problem
chibi,
for me.
but not quite.
Yeah. But I like everything else. The combat system especially is neat. One of my favorite things about it is this is one of the only RPGs I've played where when you get a description of a move, it gives you actual numbers. And I love that. I feel like when I play RPGs, you look at a move and it's like, this attack does big damage. Whereas in Default, it's like, here's a number that you can look at and is more tangible. And was something that annoyed me with Project Triangle too, is when you look at the stats and the abilities, you don't actually exactly know what they do. You just vaguely know what they do. And in a game genre that's kind of based on strategy, that's always bothered me.
Yeah, that's fair, because how are you supposed to plan?
So it's definitely a game I want to play eventually. The first Bravely Default, the story also didn't grab me, which is why I stopped halfway through. So I don't know if that's better in the second one or not, or if maybe just it's not the series for me. I'm not sure, but I do want to try the second one at some point for sure.
I mean, it feels more interesting to me this time around. I find it's between the acting, the drama, and not just the voice acting, like the model acting is a lot better too and a lot more engaging because they just have more to work with a more powerful system and engine to play around in. But yeah, just the moment-to-moment scenes are much more engaging. The characters are much more seemingly invested in what's going on. So that grabbed me a lot more, and maybe that might have been something for you. Also, significantly a lot less cringe and creepiness in this cast and in the story as was in Bravely Default.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in this story is quite as annoying as Agnes or Ring a Bell in Bravely Default, and there's a lot less silly campfire, what are your favorite foods chats like there were in Bravely Second. Bravely Second wasn't as well received, and I think Asano even apologized for it at one point, or around the time Octopath Traveler was coming out. But I would agree the writing in this game is a little better than Bravely Default 1, but also I feel like maybe this is related to the disappointments in quality of life and UI stuff. This game did get delayed at one point, and they were finishing development through pandemic times, so that might have affected development in a way that why this game feels slightly underdone in terms of polish. Because also, I mean, I played it I don't know, probably 75-25 handheld versus console, because I like playing my Switch in handheld mode. And I wanted this to feel like, the previous Bravely games I played in handheld mode.
It does chug a little bit in handheld.
It does.
It chugs a little bit on console too.
Yeah, like even just going from menu to menu or opening a party chat window or something, sometimes there are multiple seconds of delay, which is not the snappiness you would expect out of a Nintendo exclusive game. But I mean, I hope I'm selling this game in a mostly positive way, because I had a lot of fun with it. I liked the characters, thought the story was at least enough, but to just have a lot of fun tinkering around with this job system. Towards the end of the game, there's a lot of optional boss fights and endgame challenges that drop really cool equipment that let you even play around with the job system more, avoiding spoilers. And I did not all of them, but I did I think I did 6 out of the 7 special ones, and then none of the end game super bosses. So there's still more to play after you're way too powerful for the final boss.
See, it's a funny thing. I think that this game, I'm in the end game right now. I think that the battle system actually gets better the further into the game you get. I've been finding, especially with some of these end game bosses, that they have been providing me a real challenge in a way that, just what you were talking about earlier, Sollosi, which is, you go in, you get your ass handed to you, you have to go back out, you have to respec, you need to figure out, you need to go through your abilities and figure out, okay, maybe this could counter this, maybe this could counter this. And I find that to be a lot of fun, making it a bit more like not a puzzle game, but it's like every battle is a bit of a puzzle to try to figure out which skills counteract
strategy.
Yeah, it's a
very strategic system this time around.
Well, speaking of strategic system, Greg, have you gotten into the card game yet?
No, I have not yet. I was trying to look for it because I know I'm around that part, but I'm working with Annie Hall right now and going down into the caves and such. But I feel like that's close at hand. That I'm going to be encountering Bernard and trying to work towards the thief or the gambler or whatever it is. So I feel like I'm going to get that.
You are pretty close. Maybe 1 or 2 dungeons from where you are now. If you just go into the gambling hall, you'll see the gambling lady, and she'll teach you the card game.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited for trying that out because I've heard good things from both of you. And I also like, speaking of minigame aspects in this thing too, which you didn't really touch on, Sollosi, yet, was both in Bravely Default 1 and 2, there was an idle management game that gave you bonuses. And now you got one that you really don't have to manage. And I really like it. I like it.
Yeah, you meet a nice old lady that gives you a boat at the beginning of the game, and when your game is in sleep mode, you can have the boat go out and collect items for you.
And they're very useful.
And they're very useful. A lot of the time, their experience or JP boosting orbs or stat boosting buns. But the key thing is, it doesn't work if the game is turned off. It has to be in sleep mode. So don't exit out of the game entirely if you want to have your boat go out collecting items for you.
Because you can do it for a max of 12 hours.
Yes, correct. It caps off collecting items and events at 12 hours. So again, sleep mode, don't turn it off all the way if you want to use the boat.
Mm-hmm. I just like the idea that in between this massive world-changing adventure where, Seth and his friends are trying to save the world from this evil, Seth's just, heading out on a boat, going on these really boring adventures, looking for treasure on an island, that kind of thing. It's like he is a shipwrecked sailor, and that is most of his character backstory. Yeah, which is surprisingly, I mean, again, I haven't finished the game yet, but not really talked about in comparison to all of the other characters. Gloria, Elvis, and Adele have much more exciting story backgrounds than Seth does, but he's
just thrown into it.
It is addressed somewhat towards the end of the game.
Well, I have to imagine, considering early on the big story moment around him and the crystal and why he could be chosen. So I'm hoping there'll be more about it. Nicholas, you could probably speak better to this, I guess, than the rest of us, and how Mike was worrying that he may or may not be selling the game well. You haven't played any of them. Why? And is Bravely Default 2 appealing to you in any way, or are you just kind of like, whatever?
Well, I will say a job system is very appealing.
Good, you're a good person. We can stay friends.
I've always enjoyed that. I think for me, my first real game where there was a lot of job options was actually Dragon Quest VII, which had like maybe almost too many jobs. Like there were some jobs that just kind of seemed just thrown in there for the hay of it that didn't really add anything. But I understand this game, it's like 12 or 13 jobs or something like that.
It's 24 jobs, and
okay.
And you sort of every chapter gives you, I think, 3 or 4, and when Elvis joins you at maybe 20 minutes in, he comes with the Black Mage asterisk that was left to him by his mentor. So you start out with Freelancer and Black Mage, and then you find 19 from story bosses, and then 3 from optional story bosses. So
that's a lot less of the
total
optional
24
than the previous ones, but still. Cool.
Yes, correct. In Bravely Second, I think there was 30 of them, but only 12 were part of the story, and the other 18 were optional. So in this game, you get almost all of the jobs playing the story normally, and then to unlock the secret best ending, you have to find the 3 optional ones as well.
Gotcha. And sorry, you're saying, Nicholas?
Yeah. So. Most of the time we've been talking here, there's been a lot of comparisons to games that they're like, such as Final Fantasy V, the whole crystal aspect, and there's apparently a card game. So I will ask, what differentiates this series from, just another Final Fantasy or something like that?
Well, these are Square Enix games, and they use a lot of Final Fantasy imagery deliberately. Like Phoenix Downs are the reviving item, and there's white mages and black mages and red mages, and a lot of traditional Final Fantasy jobs, plus a few that are sort of more its own deal. But I think the defining characteristics are that these are old school JRPGs deliberately that twist the mechanics of what a JRPG is with the Brave default system and with everything that the different jobs can do, and then also with the very basic mechanics of what an RPG is. Avoiding spoilers, there are twists about people in your friends list and how you save your game at the end of the different Bravely games, and things that like they are unabashedly old school 90% of the way, but then they mess with mechanics with this deep job system and mess with RPG conventions with the story twists and the weird crap that happens at the end of each of these games. And but I don't think and as crazy and fun as the job is, I don't think anything is quite as crazy as like Jono, I know you played Bravely Second recently. Did you ever experiment with an Exorcist ghost build?
No, I don't think I have.
But, okay, just to
how much can you break the game with it?
Well, that's the point of these games. It's you can figure out job combinations that will just break it to pieces, and that's part of the fun, really.
Basically, the Exorcist build is you equip an Exorcist ability that lets you cast spells after you die, because when you die, instead of becoming a corpse, you become a ghost that can cast spells. But can't attack or brave or default. So basically the game wants you to just sort of give you a chance to revive yourself as a ghost. But if you equip another ability that makes all spells 0 MP if your health is below 10%, then it basically turns you into a mage ghost with infinite mana, and you can break the game by having three infinite mana super ghosts by putting them into a powerful mage class like summoner or wizard or something. And then give them the ectoplasm exorcist ability to make them ghosts. And then have your fourth character, the tankiest knight or templar or guardian possible, just so they're unkillable and your ghosts can cast all the spells they want. Because if your team becomes 4 ghosts, it is a game over. But
okay, gotcha.
So there's nothing quite as gross as exorcist ghost infinite MP mages. But there are ways to really shatter the game and then reassemble the pieces into something really fun.
We actually had a conversation. I don't know if it was you and I, Sollosi, but it was somebody when we were talking about Bravely after I played in 2020, earlier in 2020, and I needed an escape from the world, and I found a very good run in the Bravely series. And I postulated that with Final Fantasy IV, is it 4 Heroes of Light? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the DS game that is kind of a Bravely Zero.
Yeah, it's kind of a Bravely Zero.
studio.
It's almost the prototype, but with that, Bravely almost reminds me of a like a parallel universe version of Final Fantasy, which continued down the road of Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6 for the Super Nintendo, and didn't go the way of Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 on the PlayStation. It's kind of like almost an alternative evolutionary offshoot of what Final Fantasy is. And like today we have Final Fantasy, we have the Final Fantasy, we're waiting for 16, and 15 was out, and that it's a very, very different game than it was back in the days of the Super Nintendo system. Whereas the Bravely series feels like what would have happened if those games had continued to develop with new mechanics and new ideas, in almost like the 2D realm, with almost like the overhead classic style of RPG. So I consider it to be, your question was, why would you play these games, basically? Instead, like, it's like Final Fantasy V or it's like Final Fantasy 3. Why would you play these the Bravely series instead of those games? It takes those ideas and just continues them. In many ways, it feels like a sequel to the Final Fantasy in the classic sense, that every Final Fantasy game builds on the mechanics of the previous one while not picking up on the story.
Yeah, like for Nicholas and anybody else who's curious about the series, it's that comforting nostalgia, and then that they distill kind of into the story and the simplicity of the world and the stakes in a lot of ways. I find they're probably a bit more dramatic, and part of that's just what they're allowed to do with the performances of the models and such. And the breadth of the story. But then having more flexibility in the combat systems, like in the core ones where you can even adjust the encounter rate for what you feel is necessary at the time. In this one, it's more, as you get more powerful, enemies will run away from you, so you can just kind of avoid combat altogether. They have the equivalent of like a repellent to kind of keep monsters away, so you can still have some of that flexibility in how you want to encounter things. But then having all the various ways, even in battle, to like, some moves will cost you brave points to use. Some moves will cost you the MP, as you would expect. Some will cost you hit points. So there's a bunch of different diversity in how you can manipulate the various classes to all work together to make really interesting builds, like the gross one that Sollosi just described from Andalayer.
And in Bravely Default 2, the one we're talking about now, there are job skills that take away the MP or BP costs of different skills, or will let you spend MP instead of HP on skills. Like there's, to build upon the point Jono was making, it's like the designers of this game. Maybe I could subscribe to Auteur theory and say it's Asano who's doing this. Is they have a lot of nostalgia for that era of RPG, and they're trying to make games in that style, but with an unreal amount of depth of mechanics and modern design sensibilities
that are still very simple to grasp too.
Yeah, it like once you mess around with braving and defaulting for a minute, it's like, oh, brave lets me take extra turns, and default lets me save up future turns, and it's very easy to understand once you mess around with it a little bit.
Yeah, the meta manipulating the equipment and some of the skills and abilities and how those can help you, break things. That's where it gets a little bit more heady, but even then, like, it's still pretty simple to uncover these simple, fun things and just go, haha, got a new thing, I'm gonna wreck the world,
Okay, I mean, one thing I didn't know was the combination of job classes. That's a really cool concept.
Yeah. It's like, that was the best part of Tactics, is mixing and matching.
Yeah, you equip one job, then you equip a second job as your sub-job, and each job has 2 passive specialties and learns, I don't know, between 8 and 10 abilities, and then between 1 and 5 passives, and you can mix and match them all together, and the tinkering of jobs and job systems is really, really fun.
I like that there's a lot more flexibility in the passives in this one as opposed to the original 2 too. Like, there's just a lot more you can invest in it out the gate.
And in the first 2, each job's passive specialty was just an ability you could equip later. But in Bravely Default 2, specialties are separate from passives, and there's a way to pass job specialties between each other that is not the same way as skill passives. There's a lot of tinkering and job manipulation that and when you start getting into end game special equipment, Jono knows what I'm talking about, you can break it even further. It's great.
And then there's the The other thing I did like the quality of life that kind of makes things a bit snappier in this one too is you don't have to buy all the spells and such, which it reduces a bit of the money grind a bit, but they're also not giving you all the bonuses like they did in the first one. So I appreciate that as your mages learn spells, they get the spells. You don't have to go track down the store to buy them.
And you can also choose, like another good quality of life thing for battles is you can also speed up battles and slow them down to its regular pace for grinding and things like that.
I do miss the classic repeat system, though, where you can just kind of autopilot it. Like, you have to trigger it in each individual battle in this one, which is kind of tedious.
Oh, yeah,
and not the end of the world.
In Bravely Default and Bravely Second, you could program how auto battles worked and just play the game almost without pressing any buttons. But in this game, there is no auto battle. Yeah, there is no auto battle programming. You have to at least press Y to repeat their previous action. Again, that's something that I felt like could have been in the game, but feels like a missing piece, and it might be because of pandemic development environments.
That's possible. Can we also agree that overburden is annoying?
Yeah, there is an equipment overburdening system that is annoying, and the accessories that have negative overburden stats are really, really great because they let you equip all the heavy armor and weapons you want.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, something that's missing for me, which I would really like, I don't think this was in the prior Bravely games, but I really would have liked where you can actually do presets for jobs and abilities and even armor, so you don't have to be constantly going in and switching.
Yeah.
And switching
kind of like
out,
in 14?
Yeah, and switching out abilities. So you can have like, okay, here's a party that I use whenever I'm fighting a mage. Here's a party that I use when I'm fighting primarily physical. Like that, I thought that would have been a really nice quality of life thing, just to have like party presets,
like saving loadouts. But that would have been very welcome in this game. Yeah, I agree.
Because I do find myself, especially in the late game, going in and changing a lot of things on a regular basis.
Lots of tweaking.
The auto equip in this is just a crapshoot.
No, it's useless.
Yeah, useless. Totally useless.
Pressing the auto equip button is normally a starting point in other games, and for this, it's a mistake. You don't want to press auto equip.
No, the worst is when if I have dual equip as an ability, and I have that ability equipped, and I hit auto equip just to see. Oftentimes, it'll give me the strongest, heaviest weapon and the weakest, lightest weapon in the other hand, which is useless.
Or they'll give you a shield anyway.
Exactly.
It's crazy. It's Do you have and Jono, I know you're near the end. Maybe just to cap off this discussion, do you have a favorite job?
Do I have a favorite job? I really like Phantom.
Phantom's up there. Phantom's definitely in my top 3. This game does not have a ninja job, but Phantom replaces it and does a lot of extra fancy things with it that are pretty awesome.
Yeah, if you want your, I don't know if it's the biggest damage hit in the game, but if you take your Phantom and you equip the Thief subjob and you use the Thief subjob's one of their most advanced abilities, Godspeed Strike.
Godspeed Strike came back. Mm-hmm. Good. It is broken in Bravely Default.
It is
so
maybe
broken.
Your best damage option for like the entire middle third of the game. It's really good.
It's ridiculous because it calculates your damage based on speed, not your attack. Although that does matter, but off speed. So you equip Phantom, which has unbelievable speed. You use Godspeed Strike, and it will attack them for whatever you hit them for, and then a turn later for that amount of damage again. So if you have the ability to like break the damage limit, you can hit them for tens of thousands of damage. It's fun. Like we said, breaking the game.
I just for my own, I mean, Phantom would have been one of my choices for this as well. But I think one of the most fun ways to break the game is to get real weird with the Red Mage job.
Yeah, that's a good one to break with.
Once you get it to level 12, the specialty becomes Chain Spell, where you just cast every spell equipped to it twice for no extra MP. And then there's it gives you one of the abilities late in the game that allows you to use HP instead of MP for spells, so you can use MP as as MP for other reasons. And the other weird shout out I want to give is the Spirit Master job, which is really different from the Bravely Default 1 Spirit Master. This Spirit Master can you can summon passive spirits that heal
useful.
That either heal your MP or HP or cast a group life spell every 2 or 3 turns. That, like, it basically just they found out a way to give you passive regen and passive healing with a job dedicated to it. That's really, really fun. So yeah, like that's just a taste of the depths of this job system.
One question for you just before we wrap this up about perhaps, the idea like the pandemic development and such and the nature of this game and how there's only like three bonus asterisks. This game could potentially lend itself to having DLC. Do you think we're going to see that?
My guess would be no. If there was DLC, it could be costumes or similar. Bravely Default did have again, this is in 2012 to 2014, but Bravely Default 1 did have an entire second version of the game that was released, like kind of a Bravely Default 2 Royal. I'm sorry, a Bravely Default Royal, as you would. But it was and the version that the West got was the second upgraded version.
Oh, right.
Which better led into Bravely Second.
Right. And so I think that because Silicon Studio doesn't do a ton of that, probably not, but if they did DLC that was like a special cave with a new asterisk at the end of it, I would at least look at the price, because the special boss fights and the job system are two of the big selling points of this game.
So it already feels like pretty much a complete game. You're not really missing or wanting more story-wise.
No, and I mean, some, I don't know if I would be among them, but some could claim that Bravely Second was much more like a piece of DLC for Bravely Default.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route, actually, if the next sequel to the game was a direct sequel to Bravely Second. Bravely Fourth, I guess.
Bravely 2.2.
And also, Bravely Default 2 does not really have any connections to the previous games, other than things like jobs and the concept of asterisks. So if they were to do like a DLC episode that tied it to the other worlds of Bravely, I think that's possible. And the way they frame the game towards the end, it's possible.
Yeah.
That there could be other worlds or other stories.
Ring a Bell shows up at the end of the game being like, "Do you want to join the Bravely Initiative?"
Yeah.
Put on this bikini. No takers? Damn it. Tried this in 16 other realms. Didn't work there either. At any rate.
You're 18 in the West, right?
As we round things out here, just to rope Brian and Nicholas back into part of this chat. Brian, what's one game that you think would be fun with a job system? Doesn't matter if it's an RPG or not.
I used to be really into the Halo series, and I feel like you could do a job system there with the different types of Covenant.
That would be fun. I guess, I don't know if they maybe came up a bit in the tactic game, for better or worse that was, Halo Wars, but yeah, that could be really neat. Whether it's an RPG version or not, I guess you're just kind of class changing. That would have made online multiplayer a bit more interesting, kind of more like Call of Duty-esque. Same question for you, Nicholas.
So this one might be a bit of a cop-out because it exists now, but in my brain, it didn't exist yet. The first thing that came to mind was the Yakuza series, and then I was like, oh yeah, I have something to look forward to.
In Yakuza Like a Dragon, you literally go to the job unemployment office to change jobs.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Sollosi, what's a game that you would love to play with the jobs from?
Sure. Now my simple answer is Mega Man, and my elaborated answer is imagine a Mega Man game where when you beat a boss, instead of gaining their weapon, you gain a job, and the job is something you can level up and combine with other jobs and tinker around with the specific skills with.
So you can like almost combine the two weapons, which I guess we haven't really seen in a Mega Man game, have we?
Not really. Like you are some Mega Man games let you equip weapons and still use your Mega Buster at the same time,
right?
But none that let you sort of combine different weapons into others. Like I'm just imagining a Mega. Yeah, I'm imagining a Mega Man game that has jobs instead of weapons that you collect from bosses, and jobs being something you can customize and level up more so than a traditional Mega Man.
Yeah, you get like their programming or whatever, and you can unlock the programming, and that's dope. Gosh, the new Mega Man Legends, please.
New
better.
Mega Man X, please.
Oh, there we go,
Mega
sure.
Man Legends can say in the past. I played those for a podcast and was not impressed.
Fair. Whatever. A new, better version of that, I guess, is what I'm thinking. But yeah,
Sure.
it would work, I guess, as the action platformer too. That'd be a pretty cool system as well. And Jono, what's your vote?
Okay, it wouldn't work in the context of what the game is, but in a crazy parallel world where we have an Ace Attorney RPG, a job system would be very, very interesting, where you can, like, your defeated opponents in the courtroom, you can get their jobs, because there's a bit of crossover between the overblown personalities of Ace Attorney and the overblown villains of Bravely Default.
That's fair.
And Ace Attorney has better death animations for those villains.
Ace Attorney has the best death animations.
Maybe the best death animations in video games. That some of them are downright amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I am honestly now just super stumped on what the hell I would want to pick, because we've had some really good answers. Mega Man was almost there. There's a weird part of me, I guess, that kind of wants to do like a Pokemon, where you get different Poke jobs, because there's always so many different characters and NPCs that you interact with in Pokemon that are like different jobs, Pokemon breeders and stuff. It'd be neat if you as a Pokemon trainer can take on those Pokemon jobs, and it gives you different bonuses or stuff that you can apply to your Pokemon team. I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Oh, you know what would be an amazing game to have a job system?
Go on.
A genuine sequel to Mario RPG.
Well, yeah, we talked about that on when Tucker was on.
Yeah, so you could, like, your fight, you could get like a job, Dr. Mario, you could get his like construction worker outfit.
Yeah, Mario Kart
Like
Mario.
From back in the Wrecking Crew days.
Yeah, all of the costumes from Super Mario Odyssey could just be different jobs.
I mean, you can almost just do a Barbie RPG now for all the friggin' jobs she's had.
I believe that Barbie is actually one of the most underdeveloped, like, the sheer potential that Barbie has to be a pulp hero is ridiculous. She's a polymath. She's a polymath who literally does everything. She's a race car driver during the day. She is like a heart surgeon at night. She'll fly the plane to get to the hospital. Like, she's Buckaroo Banzai.
She's like Multiplicity, except instead of blank on the actor's name.
I would love to see like a pulp adventure series starring Barbie and her friends.
Buckaroo Banzai is Peter Ware, right? RoboCop?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, yeah. So, yes. Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. Now there is a cult movie.
It is a crazy film. I love it. It's crazy.
I haven't seen that thing in 10 years. I should see if it holds up.
John Lithgow is so good at it.
And with that, it feels like that's the end of a random encounter, because we have gotten truly random now. You can, of course, listen to us, all the backlog of episodes, where you find us, and you can also listen to other podcasts, like Mike Sollosi over here is on Retro Encounter, which we talked about, and there's a whole lot of Retro Encounter you can go listen to, right, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure when this episode airs, but Retro Encounter will be around 278, 279 episodes by then.
So there's lots of that to listen to. We finally have Rhythm Encounter back. Our fearless site leader, Mike Salvato, is helming that, and you've got plenty more episodes to listen to now with new music. The most recent episode, was that the one you were on, John, or has there been one now since?
I think it's the one I was on, yeah.
Okay.
I think we're a little behind.
No, it's not even out yet.
Behind. No, we're a little behind right now. Jono and I recorded an episode on the music of Bravely Default and Bravely Second.
Right.
That should be out later this month.
We'll have a very Bravely month for y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Hat and Eric are fun affiliates with the Phoenix Edge podcast. You can go listen to that. I just about said the Phoenix Right podcast, but I'm sure that exists somewhere. And then finally, otherwise, you can catch RPG Fan on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're kind of everywhere. You can email us at podcast@rpgfan.com if you want to talk to us about anything, give us feedback, complaints, ask questions. That's what we're here for. But otherwise, for myself, for Jono, Mike, Nicholas, and Brian, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Have yourselves a swell time. Bye now.
Be seeing ya.